All right, let's say you're a beginner looking to get into FPV and you're doing your initial research. You're probably going to quickly realize that it's not going to be as easy as you originally thought, because you're going to start to realize that you're actually going to have to learn about all the different components, how they work, which ones are compatible with each other, and how they actually go together. In the very least, you're going to have to learn about the different types of FPV drones and their flight characteristics. Then you'll have to learn a bit about electrical circuits and electronics. You'll have to learn about LiPo batteries, including how to properly charge them, how far you can discharge them without damaging them, and how to properly store them so they don't burn your house down. Then you'll have to learn various RC links and other technologies, and you'll have to learn how to solder. Then, once you actually have all your gear together, you'll have to figure out how to bind your controller to your quad. To do that, you'll have to learn how to use various software like OpenTX or Betaflight, and once everything's set up, you'll still have to practice for hours in a simulator before you can do some basic flying. And once you finally feel confident to take your drone outside, make one mistake and you could still end up losing that drone forever. And that takes a lot of time to learn, and a lot of people just want to get out there and fly. So that's why today we're talking about the DJI FPV drone. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen a ton of reviews on this already, but for those of you who haven't, this seems to be DJI's attempt in creating a consumer-friendly FPV drone. One that is packed with features which all try to get rid of some of those barriers that I just talked about. Now, the final result is a really interesting product with some pretty huge benefits, but also one that falls short in some ways. Personally, I've had a really great time flying this drone, and I'm very happy with my purchase, but also maybe not for the reasons that you'd expect, and it may or may not be right for you, because it won't be for everyone. Now, as I said, there are a ton of in-depth reviews on this guy already, so that's not what this is going to be. Instead, I want to glance over a few of the key features that make this quad special for me, some of the things that disappointed me, and talk about who I think should buy it and who should stay away from it. Without further ado, let's get into it. First and foremost, like I mentioned before, the best part about this drone, and the most obvious one, is how much it lowers the barrier of entry for new people entering the hobby. And I remember when I first started getting interested in FPV, I kept thinking, why doesn't something like this already exist that I can just buy and use right away without any of this hassle? And up to this point, I don't think there's been anything as easy as the DJI FPV drone. For example, instead of having to figure out which equipment works together and how to pair it, all the equipment in the setup was designed to work together, and pairing it is as easy as a single press of a button. Then, instead of forcing you to learn a bunch of different software like Betaflight, OpenTX, BLHeli, and whatever else you gotta learn, DJI decided to just keep a few key features and put those features into the goggles so you have easy access to them. And then they removed all the software altogether, except for their single DJI app for your smartphone, which you don't really need except for updating your equipment. Learning about LiPo batteries was also difficult and boring, so DJI just got rid of those altogether and came up with an alternative. And these give you longer flight times, they're significantly safer, and they can also be tracked by the drone so that you never run out of battery when you're in the air. The DJI FPV drone also just makes the flying experience extremely easy by providing different flight modes that allow you to fly comfortably no matter what your experience level is, and cool features like obstacle detection, an emergency stop if you get yourself in a bad situation, and also auto return to home when your battery is low, which I think is so cool. And these are all features that I haven't seen in any other FPV drone. What's great is that all these features allow you to spend less time thinking about the technicalities of FPV and more time just enjoying the experience. With this guy, the initial setup is also fairly minimal, and the DJI app is great. It really holds your hand every step of the way and just makes the whole process foolproof. With traditional FPV, especially if it's your first time, the setup will take some time and effort, and you'll be left on your own to scour YouTube for any answers to problems that you encounter along the way. Now, my second favorite feature about this drone is just the idea of having a single camera that can both send video to your goggles and record HD video as well. Now, I've used drones before that have a split camera or a camera that can do both of these functions, but none of them do their job even close to as well as the DJI FPV camera does. The first thing that I like about it is that the shot that you see in your goggles is pretty much the exact same shot that you're gonna get in the end. So especially if you're flying with manual camera settings, you can see while you're in the air if any part of your shot is overexposed or if something didn't make it into frame. With a separate camera like a GoPro, you would have to take it off the drone to play back your footage first to make sure that everything in your shot is okay. With the goggles, I just find that it's so much easier and it makes the workflow a little bit better. It's also cool that you can make certain adjustments like to your camera angle mid-flight without having to land your drone first. And the camera also has internal stabilization built in, so all your footage will be stabilized right away. The thing is though, although it is better than any other camera of its kind that I've seen, a GoPro can still produce better picture quality and better stabilization, which I'll get into a little bit later. There are also some benefits to having two cameras, and many situations where putting your GoPro at a different angle than your FPV camera can result in a better shot. But personally, after using this one, if I could have all the benefits that this integrated camera has, but just with slightly better picture quality and stabilization, I think I'd be all for having a single camera setup. So I'm personally a big fan of that. The next thing that I absolutely love about the DJI FPV drone is this: the motion controller. And yes, this does have to be purchased separately, and it actually is pretty expensive, but this makes flying FPV so incredibly intuitive that I've been able to pass this off to so many people that have never flown any type of drone before, and they were able to fly comfortably within a minute of trying it. And it's seriously so incredibly easy. And if there's anything that sold me on the DJI FPV drone, it's this. I really don't think there's anything else out there that makes flying as intuitive as this does. Finally, I know this is kind of a tacky statement to make, but this quad has reminded me why I started getting into FPV in the first place. Originally, I wanted to get an FPV drone to just explore the landscapes around me. I recently took it out to explore a few islands off the coast of where I live, and I felt really confident doing so because of its long battery life. I also didn't worry about flying too far because anytime I flew behind something and maybe lost connection, the drone kind of just brakes very quickly and hovers in place, which gives you a chance to move around and try to regain control. And the best part is that even if you can't regain control and your battery starts to drop, the drone will eventually just come right back to you. And I have other quads that have return to home features as well, but none of them that are as reliable and simple as what this guy has. And again, these features just allow you to worry less about messing something up and let you just enjoy the experience. But all that being said, it is important for me to mention that all the added benefits do seem to come with a cost. And the downside to all those added features packed into this one quad is that they make the drone heavier and less maneuverable in the air, and in my opinion, resulting in subpar performance. Now, this is where a lot of the current criticism is coming from, and a lot of experienced FPV pilots feel disappointed because the DJI quad doesn't fly quite as well as a traditional FPV quad. And it's true that you can get something with better performance for a fraction of the price. Don't get me wrong, it's still incredibly fun to fly, and as you might have seen in other people's videos, you can still get great footage out of it. But for anyone who's flown a regular FPV drone before will notice that the performance is okay, but not great. I also currently live on an island where most of the days with clear blue skies are also the ones that are the most windy as well. And I gotta say that the DJI drone does not perform well in windy environments. With a regular FPV drone, in the wind, I'll usually end up getting a little bit more drift or drag, maybe a little bit of shake that ends up getting stabilized by the GoPro, but the DJI drone seems to shake a lot in the wind. And a lot of that gets stabilized with the camera as well, but I have noticed that some of it ends up making it into the final footage, which is kind of a bummer. But that's also a good segue to my next point. The next area this quad falls short is the camera quality. The camera quality is not bad, but a GoPro definitely looks better. The stabilization of the DJI FPV drone is also not as good as GoPro stabilization. And honestly, I found this incredibly surprising. Months ago, I released a video where I shared my predictions on what a DJI FPV drone would look like if they ever made one. And at the time, I felt pretty confident that their main target market would be videographers that want to use FPV as a tool. Now, I still feel like this is an underserved potential market for FPV, and because of their other photography drones like the Mavic line, just seem to be a perfect fit. But I don't know, if that was DJI's goal to capture this market, you'd think that the main priority would be image quality. So that's what makes me see this drone as more of a high-end consumer product than even a semi-professional product. And I personally will not be using this for most of my video work. Now, the last big thing to be aware of when purchasing this drone, in my opinion, is how fragile it is. This quad will most likely not be able to survive a large crash. The materials used are not incredibly durable, and the amount of actual swappable parts available for sale are pretty limited. Most of the parts, like the arms, cannot be replaced by the pilot themselves if they break, and you'll have to send the drone to DJI for a hefty repair fee. Also, the propellers are pretty expensive. While normally a set of propellers would cost, I don't know, maybe $1 or $2, these ones cost, I don't know, let me check, $15 for 4. That's a huge difference. When I fly my regular FPV drone, because I'm always trying to push my limits, I'll usually end up breaking at least one propeller every time I take it out. So to multiply the price of these by the amount of propellers that I break, it would cost me an absolute fortune. So this isn't really the quad you want to push the limits of. So I think that if you're just a regular person who wants to get into FPV, you want to fly around, have fun, explore, maybe share the experience with your family and friends, but you don't care about having the utmost best picture quality, the DJI FPV drone would probably be the best purchase for you. It can do most of the things a regular FPV drone can do, and some things that they can't do with 90% less effort. For anyone who wants to fly FPV professionally in any capacity, I would say that getting through the initial learning curve to learn how to fly a traditional FPV drone could definitely be worth the extra effort. If you do decide to get one of these though, there are a few extra accessories that I would recommend getting to help you get the most out of it. First of all, definitely get some extra propellers, even though they're expensive. You should also get the Fly More combo, which comes with 2 extra batteries and a charging station that can charge all 3 batteries, the controller, and your goggles all at once. I think that 3 batteries is a good number. It'll give you around 30 to 45 minutes of flight time, which feels like a good amount. I think without the Fly More kit, you would just run out of battery way too quickly. The next thing I would definitely recommend is the motion controller, and I can't remember exactly how much this costs, maybe $200, but this thing is a game changer. It is important to keep in mind that when you're using this, the movements you'll be able to make with your drone are limited. You won't be able to do flips or anything like that, but still, using this is incredibly fun. So even though I know how to use a controller, sometimes I still have a better time using this thing. You just point wherever you want and the drone will go in that direction. You also might have noticed that I had an ND filter on my camera. I don't believe DJI makes their own ND filters for this drone, but the ones I use are made by a company called PGY Tech, and PGY Tech was kind enough to send these to me. Honestly, they're incredibly high quality filters. They come in this nice little magnetic case, and I would definitely recommend these. Actually, I'll also mention, they're not paying me to say this, but when they sent me those filters, they also sent me this foldable launching pad, which I really didn't think I would use. But there were a few instances where I was in an area that was all sand or had tall grass, and being able to deploy my own launching and landing zone was actually incredibly helpful. And it's just pretty high quality. But anyways, those are my thoughts on the DJI FPV drone. I know that wasn't a complete in-depth review. If you are interested in that, there's a ton of those already out there. But if you are interested in getting one, I will have a link to this down below, so feel free to check that out. Whether you are thinking about getting one, already own one, or definitely don't want one, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.